Hi, my name is Jim Cummings, and today we're going to take a look behind the curtain at The Wolf of Snow Hollow.
We have every reason to believe that this monster will show up again tonight.
So one of the scenes in the movie, actually two of the scenes in the movie were shot completely separate from principal photography. So it was something where I had written it in getting notes back from producers and studio. We had to, they didn't like the function of the movie, the equation of the movie. Loved it in screenplay format, loved it in podcast format, said that it didn't work in the video format. So they pulled scenes around and moved them around. So like you kind of pulled at the threads of the sweater and kind of removed some setup for payoff that happened later, and like jokes that have things that don't work anymore and things like that, that, were very, critical to the screenplay structure, that then were mixed up. So then in order to make that work, I was tasked with having to rewrite or create new scenes that would then do that and then shoot on a very small budget. So 66 minutes into the movie, there's a moment where Riki Lindhome, who plays Julia, is trying to get me to, it's kind of like her last ditch effort to make sure that I don't become a complete dickhead. And she says, she like grabs my leg and she's trying to get my attention, and she was going to let me get out of the car, but then changed her mind. It's this really like beautiful moment with this character. And she's finally saying what she wants to say. She has this like, she likes this guy and doesn't want to see him go off the deep end and fall off the wagon. And she says, this is really hard being a cop. It's thankless work. It's a terrible thing. You don't always catch the guy, but you're going to lose a lot more than your job if you don't start, considering the people around you. So she says,
"You want to be sheriff? How about we start acting like one?"
And in the script, my character goes, "Yeah, how about you get your goddamn hand off my thigh?" And I look up at her, and it's this insane moment of what a real alcoholic feels when they're being cornered in this moment. And she pulls her hand back and is like horrified and kind of terribly emotionally hurt, because she put herself on the line to be like, "Hey, I like you. You shouldn't be killing yourself." And then he just destroys her, and she kind of like leans back in her chair. And we held on this moment as like 15 seconds of her just like leaning back, and then me staring at her. And then I got out of the car. And everybody, when we were watching it at the studio, said he's too unlikable. You immediately lose all empathy for this character and you don't care about him. I disagreed. I think that's kind of like how alcoholics act. And I think that would be very relatable. I find that to be very interesting. And most people want to see weird people. Most people want to see interesting characters and not clean-cut, likable people. And I think that word likable is such a pervasive mind virus that is spread in screenwriting that doesn't mean anything. It just means that they seem or act or work in a certain way that is different from the reader. And I think that's so bizarre to me, and I hope it goes away. So we cut that, and then in the script, the rest of the sequence was supposed to be me getting out of the car, and then I'm in a new location, so it's a match cut of throwing these 2 tiny nip bottles of rum underneath the car, and then it's me returning evidence, and there was this music, and it kind of all led up to Julia getting the phone call from Jimmy Tatro, and we had this kind of like suave montage that was much shorter. And then because we didn't have some of the stuff, because we didn't have any of the setup for the payoff of the ending sequence, we shot this in our offices to kind of, I guess, like thread the needle, mind the pun, of all of these tiny things that the studio and the producers felt like were kind of missing. And that's kind of like a back and forth of like, how obvious do we make it? So we shot all of this stuff of Julia putting away all of the evidence into deep storage in our offices. It's actually the same room where we shoot the AA scene. So you'll see there's like identical like boards on the wall with writing on it, and that's the exact same space. We just changed the lighting. And so there's a moment inside of the AA meeting where I say, when we were gathering evidence about the suspect, and then we have somebody go, "The killer," and then I go, Yes, thank you. When we were trying to track the suspect, and then two people say killer.
Yeah. Okay, I'm working on it.
And it's like, okay, yeah, I get it. He's the guy who killed it. It's like, so the red herring is actually the killer. It's kind of just like joke, but also like we're getting the audience on board that that John was wrong. And then, but that joke was, we needed a setup because that was missing from the scenes that we cut of me at the end of the film, where I come in and sit down at the table and I say the suspect or the killer, and then that becomes me realizing or admitting to myself in private that the red herring killer probably was the killer. It's kind of this nice little setup and payoff. But writing all of this stuff was actually the hardest writing that I had to do in the movie, because the rest of the screenwriting was very free and open. It was like, you just have to tell a detective story. You just have to make the audience laugh and cry and drop little bits of evidence in the detective story throughout. This one was actually trying to meet specific lines of dialogue that were given to me by other people, and trying to make that good at all was very difficult. And I ended up writing this bit of John talking about having a nervous breakdown while I was having those feelings of like, I'm struggling to write this because it's going to come across as lame and it can't be awful. And so I'm in this like Winston Smith 2 + 2 = 5 mode here of like trying to make the math work of this screenplay. And then just also trying to make sure that people weren't going to make fun of us. Like, the movie can't suck 65 minutes into the movie. It has to be consistent and good throughout. So I was going through hell trying to make it work, and people around me were like, is everything okay? Like, are you all right? And I'm like, no, I'm not okay. Like, this is fucking terrible. Like, this isn't going to work. Like, everything else is fine. Trust me, the audience is going to get this stuff. And then it got to a point where I was just like, well, I'm the guy. I'm the person in the frame. If I were just the director, they could have replaced me in a heartbeat. But because it has to be my physical body standing up and doing the thing, it became so much harder for me to do it. It became this like identity crisis almost, that it couldn't be bad. It couldn't be mediocre. And so I spent this rushed job of like a week and a half trying to write it to make it good. And we got there. It was like, Ken did a fantastic job shooting it. It was like this fluid, quicker shoot than we had from the principal photography. And, we got it. But it was by far the hardest thing to do because it was an assignment rather than a screenplay. Writing scripts at that level is a battle of diplomacy, and everybody wants to get the movie done, and everybody thinks that there are good ways to finish a movie. It's a weird thing where we were getting notes from people after we shot the movie that the movie should actually end where Julia has been kidnapped and then I have to come in and save the day. And then it's like, well, no, I think modern audiences are okay with not, without the girl getting in trouble and the guy having to come in and save it. Like, most people, like, the opposite is better, and like that seems so untrue for the rest of the movie. Like, it's a weird thing of like having to and that's what it is. Like, making movies at this level is that everybody has a say, and then it's your job as the creator and the screenwriter to try and weave what everybody wants out of it. And then if you can come up with something cooler that audiences or critics are actually going to like better, all of those complaints go out the door. All of those initial ideas immediately evaporate, because there is a right answer to how to tell a joke or what's going to actually work in a scene. I always say that laughter is the mind sneezing, and if it's uncontrollable. So like, if you can make an audience laugh, it's, you win, and it doesn't matter all the arguments that you have before. You just got to focus on what's actually going to work with the sound and the video.